Good day, everybody. Dave Mahaley here. I want to welcome you all to the 5th episode of the Pandemic Educator. In our attempt to go through and learn a little bit about how this pandemic has changed some things with just teaching and learning. We will be able to have some guests here in just a bit. Welcome you all to the program. A little background you can see on the screen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We've talked, kind of introduced myself in the previous weeks if you've been here. Again, all of this information I make available online just minutes or so afterwards. The video of the actual episode will be placed onto the site. I'll give you the link to about 2 or 3 days later. So we've got people from all over. Hello from Dallas and San Diego and a few other places, it looks like. I know we've got close to near St. Louis there. We've got here in Raleigh and elsewhere. The goal here, again, is to look at our situation and go through and discuss some important key pieces of information about how are we teaching, how are the learners learning, and those who support the learners, what's their role in this? And we've had a number of, I think, really great guests recently. And, looking at this week when we're talking about a report from the Housefront, we'll sort of springboard off of our guest last week, who was Joy Clark, a math instructor. She gave us some great insight into the day-to-day work that she's done to really keep her students connected and to keep learning remotely. We're going to kind of flip that around and look at the other side of the equation this week. And we're going to start to look at sort of the learner or the student, the family, the content consumer, and look at the entire network here of the ones receiving that information, receiving the learning. What does that look like? And I think checking in with the families and understanding what they're facing and how what we're doing as educators, they're receiving, is quite important. That's why I've entitled this episode as sort of a status check, a report from our Housefront. A couple of things I'll talk about here, and then we'll get on to our guest for the day. 3 points of emphasis that I want to spend just a few minutes on here at the beginning of the show, talking a bit about IEP and individualized education and these plans and the dilemmas of trying to convey, relay, and perform services for this set of students. I want to talk about the thriving some kids are experiencing through the remote learning. And I think there's some evidence of that, which is kind of interesting. And in the world of higher ed, a lot of talk really about this next year, what's going to happen, everything from summer sessions on into fall sessions, and the idea of this gap year, that topic I've heard quite a bit about, knowing a number of students graduating and getting ready to move on and thinking about that possibility. So we'll jump into a couple of these topics. Again, if you have some questions, you can type those into the chat window and I'll keep up along there. Any of the articles that I'm referring to, there'll be also pasted a link in the title in the chat window as we go along, so you can open those up or look at those if you like as we're going through things. With individualized education plans, one of the things that I think educators are faced with is trying to meet the needs of these students, and really all of our students, but especially those who have an issue with an identified learning disability or other types of disabilities that would require some special services, and how to be able to support that remotely. Catherine Fishman Weaver posted an article this past week highlighting 6 ways to transition these goals to remote learning. The Department of Education did release some information about the guidance granting schools and teachers, the specialists, sort of flexibility in how to match up services that they can do remotely with students' IEPs. This permission to be flexible really leaves many questions, however. Most important, how do we do right by our students and support them remotely? The short answer is it's complicated, and we're still figuring it out. And the 6 areas that she has pointed out here, I think, start to tell a story that's sort of a recurring theme with this particular show that we've done each week. And this theme of very clear, frequent communication is so important. And it's to support someone with their learning and to give the people supporting them in the household something to work from, I think is really key. And that communication comes through in the 6 things she pointed out in this article. And when providing services remotely, many times relying on the people in the house to carry these out, the communication becomes that primary activity to ensure things are done well, done correctly, done in a supportive way to continue learning. A second point I would say here is really number 6. I think it's worth reminding everybody, and I think more and more people I see doing this, really reimagining how things can be done. You know, kind of getting out of, some people's talking about thinking outside the box. Well, we're probably thinking outside the classroom at this point. How do we do some of these things in a different environment? And I think a lot of things can be accomplished that way. And in some ways, I think we'll discover some types of learning that actually can improve some performance because we've been forced into a new landscape to be able to prepare learning. The second item here is talking about thriving with remote learning. I mean, much of you probably in the same situation I've been in. I've heard a wide range of stories here, you know, from, hey, this is great, I like this, I want to do online learning from now on, to other stories of real struggles. And I think it leaves people wondering about the performance of students and how that has changed due to this new format. Some very interesting things are happening in some cases. From an article entitled, "Why Are Some Kids Thriving During Remote Learning" by Nora Fleming, some are finding some pleasant surprises. There's some possible connections between increased student engagement and the flexibility of schedules now found in this type of learning. And I always witness this too, using technology in the classroom. You know, when you do a warm-up activity and it's a discussion question and it's in an LMS, everybody's participating, from the introvert to the extrovert, from the shyest of the shy to the one who wants to entertain the classroom, you know, the whole time. And I think that equality and being able to participate at the education level in the classroom was very valuable. And I think a lot of that can be transmitted into this remote learning. And I think that's where you're going to find some real differences, and perhaps bringing out some students who maybe weren't quite that vocal in the regular classroom. It's also noted in there that some kids, even who have hyperactivity, online learning allows them to pace out things, to sort of channel out the learning into smaller chunks and smaller pieces or segments. And that shift during the day of the way things are learned gives more responsibility to the parents, more responsibility to the students and the learners to kind of plan out and manage their day. With some kids, a perhaps better sleep schedule, more sleep. There's lots of research about, you know, some schools starting at 7:15 in the morning. How does that match up with teenagers and things like that? Perhaps that sleep adjustment and the ability to manipulate that a bit in the schedule has brought about some positive things. The standardized tests will be interesting as those sort of have you know, gone away for the most part. And that stress, that anxiety of the end of the year and needing to perform and all of that maybe will be drifting away just a bit. Not that there's not going to be other anxious moments, you know, how do we wrap up the year? How do we start the next year? Am I going to go on to the next, you know, all those questions are there. But I think some of the testing issues maybe are put on the back burner, which personally I think is a great idea because they're a source of a lot of stress, I know, in the schools. And with some of the school schedules coming up, I'm curious about how this remote learning will impact decisions to be made. When do we start school? I know here in North Carolina, there's been lots of discussion and some declarations really at the state level that, hey, you can start early with your school year this next year. So I know, for example, just today in the county I live in, they've decided that they're going back a week early in August. That's at least the plan they have now. All that is subject to change though, I guess, for sure. Another interesting thing in higher ed, and students are, May 1st a lot of times is seen as somewhat of a, or April sometimes, a deadline to make decisions, final decisions for schools if students haven't done that already. But this idea of gap year and the impact of that sort of possibility on the enrollment and where students are going to go when it comes to the fall. Parents are going to wonder what impact this will have on the colleges and universities in terms of, will the pandemic require us to continue to do a lot of courses online and that delivery? What about on-campus housing? Is that even going to be a possibility or not? And the traditional college experience, where does that go? How does that find its place if there's still a lot of separation that has to be going on? Gap year can be, that approach can really be helpful to some students, and in some cases they may be required to do this as part of programs they enroll in. The Gap Year Association, they put kind of some ideas out there. If someone's considering this, hey, consider these 4 options here as ways to make that a productive experience as part of building on your education once the year is done and you're moving on to regular formal school. And the other thing that as reading about these things, the requirements from institution to institution can vary quite dramatically. So any student saying, I'm going to do a gap year, I'm like, oh, well, you need to check with the colleges and universities. You need to see what that requires and what those possibilities are. So I think that's something to encourage those at the moment where they're having to make those kind of decisions. Be interesting to see how that plays out for the nation as deadlines come and go for enrolling and committing and doing those sort of things for the fall semester, especially as we get to that. This idea at higher ed, I mean, there's a lot of things it impacts, and even my own son, will be a junior this next year, well, everything's online. Actually, I think he took his last exam today, so he's, I guess, officially done. But I start to think, well, if his classes are going to be online, why am I going to pay $500 a month for him in his apartment? I mean, he could sit in a room in my house and still connect. A lot of things are closed. There's not that experience going on. So I think that becomes a bit of expanding impact that we see with something like this pandemic and decisions families are having to make. I know we've got some things in the chat going on here. Let me take a quick skim of that. The articles again are being posted there, and thanks to my wife Lori's staying there putting those in. She's doing a little multitasking herself, participating in a staff meeting and helping me here. So she's got 2 Zooms happening. Let's see, finish their assignments faster. Yeah, that's right. Reba mentioned about the speed with which people can get done, some students with their assignments, because it's kind of given here, here's what you need to do and here's what you need to produce. That's true. And yeah, going back to work. Some parents I know at 5 p.m., the magical 5 p.m. hour here in North Carolina, things are going to be at stage 1 of reopening. Some things are going to start to happen. Then a few weeks and it would be anticipated we go to a stage 2. So a lot of the adults that are there at the house now, what happens when they start to transition back to those responsibilities with work? And hopefully we'll get a little insight about some of those things with our guests here, just about what does the future look like, because I think that's important. Let's see. I want to take just a minute and introduce, we have 2 families represented here, and we have Jamie Grayson and James Henry. They're joining us from Raleigh. And then we have Declan and Becky, and Quentin and Everett won't be there on the camera, but I know Becky can share a little bit about their experience in elementary school. And they're joining us from outside St. Louis to give us a bit of perspective about, this idea of learning at home. What does it mean? How do you navigate those things? Because I think that's well worth our time to explore just a bit. If you each, Jamie, you can jump in first if you want, and just brief introduction. You can tell us anything you'd like to tell us, and we'll get started into a few questions I'd like to ask.
Hey everyone, excuse me, my name is Jamie. I have 5 children, but 2 still at home. This is Grayson.
Hi.
She is 17 and she's in 10th grade. And this is James Henry.
Okay.
And he is 13 and in 7th grade. So we actually, I don't like the coronavirus, but I do like the fact that these kids are able to school from home. I've always been terrified of it, but it's been a blessing for us because they're on their own schedule. They're doing, and it's quiet, it's not chaotic. They seem to be handling the situation very, very well.
Very good. Well, Becky, what about from your area?
So hi, I'm Becky. This is Declan. Hi. Declan's gonna be 11 in a couple weeks. He's in 5th grade. My other two are twins, but you can't tell. And they're in 2nd grade. And I'm actually a high school teacher. So I have the kind of trying to juggle it from the two sides, as a working parent, but also the teacher part, and then having them work from home. And we've had we have mixed reviews here about it, so I'm excited to learn what everyone else has gone through and share some of our experience as well.
Great. I've got these questions sort of divided out into a bit of categories, and we can just take turns sort of sharing how do you see these particular topics. And first I want to talk a little bit about the delivery, and this is the delivery of the content. How are those learning in your house getting things from teachers, from schools? And if you could give us a quick summary of what does this look like in your house, and how does this equate out to a daily schedule for you or a weekly schedule that you've been able to attempt to create to facilitate the learning to continue on? And Jamie, why don't you take this one first?
Delivery has been via email or the Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And they log on each day and they get up. I'm kind of taking a more slack approach. We kind of don't have a big schedule. When they get up, they eat their breakfast, they say their Pledge of Allegiance, they log onto the computer and start their day. And they go into Canvas. They have a Canvas system at the school they attend, and they go in there and get their assignments. And thank goodness we had bought desks for them, set that area up, and they're very independent. And they've done well. They've done really well with it so far.
That's good. And Becky, what about from your end of things?
So the things we had going for us is that our district is one-to-one with Chromebooks. They're one-to-one with Chromebooks in the upper grades, but they had enough of them also in the schools that every elementary child could get one. So they have their Chromebooks and they use Google Classroom. We have Canvas in our district as well. Their teachers just all happen to be using Google Classroom as their place. So I get an email as a parent each week with, here's the rundown of what's happening. And then they know to go on to Google Classroom. And then they have a Zoom meeting every Monday with their teacher. And they've gotten really good at, even as the 2nd graders, they can get onto, the link is in Google Classroom, they know how to get to it. And so they have their Zoom meeting each Monday, which kind of helps them know the week. And then
Rebecca, are your Zoom meetings required?
No, our district not mandated any. It has to all be, what's the word, asynchronous, right? Where they can attend the Zoom meeting, but all of them are recorded, and then they can upload them. Mine have just happened to, they fall at a time that we can all get online at the same time. We're lucky our internet holds up to it, because I know some can't all be on at the same time. Their house can't do it. So ours are luckily spaced out / we have good enough internet. And so that's, I think we've been lucky because, again, they're all in elementary school and I just have one main teacher that's sending us things. The specials teachers, art, PE, music. They have their own, they have a specials Google Classroom as well. But I think in high school it'd be much harder if you're getting emails from 7 different teachers every
Yes.
times 2, like for you. So as a teacher in high school, I'm
a pen and a piece of paper.
email to parents. Kids know to get on Google Classroom and see what I post assignment and checklist and announcements for each week. And then kids go from there to try to cut down on that for parents, because the delivery can be the overload, I think.
Yeah.
Times if it's
well. There's a couple questions that are coming through, and let's see. Virginia is talking about a little bit the need for change in just how we're teaching because of the way things have kind of been. I mean, school basically not changing 50 years ago, and I agree. Sort of this has pushed us, I think, to explore some opportunities and probably a good idea. And Reba mentioned about teachers sort of trying to take, this is what I do face to face, so now I'm just putting that online. I talked to one student this week, and they were talking about math class, and said, yeah, they do a 50-minute video, just like I was in the class. And I was like, oh, well, and seriously, I think it was just as if they were, going to teach that class face to face. They did a video, and I personally just don't think you're going to be able to capture the students that way very well. I think it needs to be broken up a bit. I think you could really focus in on the content, the how to, the why, and get them to a point where they're practicing with some things and getting involved with the content just a bit. There's another question for both of you. Well, maybe Declan and James Henry and Grayson could just share with us about how much of your day in terms of hours do you spend actually doing the work for school for that day? Just roughly.
So it definitely varies every day. Some days I have a higher workload than others, but I would say about 5 to 6 hours on average I spend every day doing all my classes, going through and making sure everything's done. But I'd say like 6 hours max and then 4 hours minimum.
Okay. James, what about you?
I'd say about between 3 to 4 hours at most.
Okay. All right. And Declan, what about you?
Like 45 minutes. Is it like an hour? That's been one of our blessings, is like he keeps his own pace, and he keeps his 30 minutes of required reading whenever he wants. And we've, full disclosure, we have stuck to core, and he's not doing art or the class or now he goes and he rides his bike every day or his scooter every day, PE, but we're not going on and logging on to do those assignments. So that would look different if I was maybe requiring every single, but he's sticking to what did his core teacher, what's math, science, social studies, and doing that, and clearly speeding through.
Well, let's talk about another topic, which I think is incredibly important, really, at this time, and I'm curious about in your cases with the school, if they've taken any kind of a role in the social emotional part of trying to keep kids connected with their peers in any way. And has there been strategies in your house that have been helpful to try to encourage that, and to, in an isolated time, try and remove as much of that isolation to keep the normalcy of kids interacting with kids that is such an important part of learning. Becky, if you want to start, just tell a little bit, and Declan, feel free to jump in with the things that you may want to share if you have opportunities where you get to still kind of connect up with friends. So.
Yeah. So I'll talk about what the twins are doing, and then Dec can tell you about.
Okay.
But so for the twins, they have the Zoom meetings, that I mentioned, and they talk about, not only what work needs to be done, but their teachers have been doing things like little games, show and tell, a scavenger hunt around the house. One of the teachers, they all watched a movie together. They watched Lion King. And they do some little things like pajama day or hat day or
Yeah.
stuffed animal or your cat. We have a cat, so they always bring their cat, but you know, the animal day or something like that. So that's from the school perspective, some of the things they're doing to still keep that face-to-face interaction and them able to see their peers, which is really nice, especially if it's someone that I'm not friends with the parent, so don't have a contact they like to see. And then at home for the twins, Messenger Kids has been a huge hit in our house. So they call their friends, they'll call their friends, and then they'll play like Roblox online together and each other while they play the game. And I can see who they're talking to, and they can only add people if it's through me. So you feel like it's very safe, and but also helping them gain some of those online communication skills that they wouldn't necessarily be gaining if we were in school face to face. So that's been good about, well, how do you talk to your friends, or what do we say? How do we, if you have a conflict or you just want to get off the phone, how do you do it nicely and not just hang up on your friends? In first, second grade. So Deck, tell them about fifth grade.
I play video games with my friends, and I ride bikes with my friends every day.
Social distance and resume. What do you guys do on your Zoom calls?
We did like bring your pet day. We did show and tell one day.
Yeah.
We did that was pretty much it. We did a movie day one day. And then my teacher every Zoom call, she leaves the Zoom call and leaves on this but keeps the Zoom call going so we can talk to everyone in the Zoom call.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, thanks. What about those of you at your house there, Jamie?
They're all, 7th grade and 10th grade. They're gonna get on their phones. They're gonna get on the gaming systems. And the best part is being at home so that my 7th grader can go outside and play. Because a lot of the kids here, they don't all go to the same school. I don't know how it is in St. Louis, Rebecca, but the school, the where everything's districted is really strange here. And my kids attend a private school, but there's 8 boys on the street, and maybe 2 of them go to the same school. So they can go outside, he can go outside and ride bikes with them. He can go play basketball or whatever they're doing. He can finally interact with them because he also plays tennis, but that's been kind of put on hold. So he's able to spend more time outside doing the things that kids this age need to be doing. Besides, that's why I've liked it, because it gives us a little more control, than our kids sitting in a chair in a classroom for 8 and 9 hours every day. So that's just me.
Well, good. It sounds like there's some things, and Virginia did mention, just gave some great ideas there in the chat about things that kids could be doing, outside the norm that are great to do at home. I think that's wonderful suggestions there, just about the different activities that could be going on. Now the all-important, this is one of my favorite topics during dealing with this situation of remote learning, is this communication piece. It's what I've tried to work with some people I've assisted in moving towards this over the months, is the importance of this communication. I'm kind of curious, you mentioned a little bit about how the learning's being delivered. So some of the communication you talked about or mentioned, but do you feel like things have been communicated well in general? If you were to make suggestions, gosh, it'd be really great if we were able to get this, from the school in terms of helping us here at home. Because I think as educators, we all want to know, we think sometimes we're providing the right information, we're providing the guidance we need, but then we have to understand how it's being interpreted by those people sitting at home, getting ready to do the learning. So Jamie, you can start and give us a little bit of information that you may have just about the communication.
I think it's gone well so far. My concern is the math. That worries me. The little bit of my son who does really well in math seems to be struggling a little bit now, and I don't know if it's because he's not in a classroom and he's having to do it more on his own. That's what I really think it is that you don't have that teacher standing at the whiteboard or doing what, teaching the children. But other than that, I think that I'm pleased overall. It's just like the core, the math. So.
Okay. Becky, what about from y'all's in there?
As far as, I think I mentioned this before, again, my kids, we get the one communication a week on average. You have I know to look for it Sunday night or Monday morning. Here's what we've got going this week. They've been good at not sending a bunch of then other random emails throughout the week. It's all really
Good.
main, so I appreciate that. I really think less is more.
Yes.
Really breaking it down to like, here's the essential things your kid needs to do this week.
We have not gotten that. Yeah.
Okay.
We have not gotten that.
Well, and like I said, as a high school teacher, I don't send that out.
Okay.
Because if I sent that out and then every other teacher that they have sends that out,
Right.
would be getting potentially 14 emails every Monday
Absolutely. Yes.
with your two kids, and that's just too much. Like, we don't
It
have
is.
to do that.
Yeah.
And so for me, I sent one out at the very beginning to parents.
Mhm.
Said, here's what I'm going to do each week. I'm going to send out, I'm going to put this in Google Classroom, and here's where it's going to be, and here's where your child should check. I'm available for Zoom. Here's my personal contact if you need to get up with me at any time during this. And kind of just laid out some things that the school had said as well. And then I left it at that, because I also was teaching, I teach 9th through 12th. I have electives, I have AP World History, I teach a US History. And so I just thought it was overkill, and they can do that on their own. So to me, the less is more. The thing that I've struggled with as a teacher, and I think that everybody has and would love to hear ideas, it's the way to give feedback well in a timely manner. I think that's what my kids could use more of as students. And I know that my student kid, I call my kids too, right? Everybody does. Like, my students could benefit from me. I am much better at the face-to-face feedback, right? And you can give it there when you see them in the classroom. I don't have that anymore. And so I think communication is fine. It's the feedback that we could all use tips and tricks, and, especially when you're teaching 130 kids.
That's right.
130 kids are engaging with me each week anymore, but even
I was going to suggest, would they ever, I didn't realize you had 130, but I was going to say maybe every 2 weeks do a one-on-one with each student, but my gosh, it's impossible.
And the other thing is, not every kid's there. I heard things, and we have to think about, some kids are thriving, like you said, and other kids, both their parents have now lost their jobs, and there's all this time, but there's a lot of time to think about, I don't know how we're going to eat next week, right? So the mental health is not always there. There's language barriers. There's we got all our students were able to ask for hotspots. So families that don't have internet, to get hotspots. Of course, everybody on the planet was asking for hotspots. So we were like 3 weeks into this before everyone got their hotspot. So you're already behind, and then just so many layers here. So many layers.
Yeah, and I think that's that part of it is something we talked about a little bit in some previous shows about how to give the feedback and ways. I think that's and it's hard because you get sort of trained into how you normally do that, and now you've got a completely new situation. In the chat, someone mentioned about just some kids sort of dropping out, and not being active and engaged with what's going on, and trying to reach out to them. I think That also, I've seen some pretty creative things done in schools where support staff within the schools have helped to reach out to ones, because it's a lot of kids in some cases that have to be contacted, and you know, in your case with 130, that would be you know, quite a task to go through and try and reach out to one of them for sure.
Yeah.
Let's focus on some positives, because I try and be kind of positive about what we're able to do in this situation and some of the good things that actually I think can come out that would be long-term gains for us in education while struggling through some particularly difficult times. And from the parent and the family perspective here, what do you feel like this has done for your own exploration of new ways that learning can happen? And have there been sort of unexpected positives or surprises that have come along the way over the past month and a half that we've been doing this? And Jamie, you can start out.
Absolutely. I've always, homeschooling, the word terrifies me. So the fact that they've been able to conquer this and I'm still alive in the process, I'm very, it's been very good around here. We've been smooth sailing. I don't know if it would still be that way if I still had my other 3 children at home, but with these 2, it's been great. My high school one, the 10th grader, has decided that this is what she wants to do. She wants to do online schooling and with dual enrollment at the local community college. This platform of learning has really been beneficial for her. And it gets rid of all the extra noise in the classroom, whereas my 7th grader, I think he, you know, most 7th graders, they don't want to be at school anyway. They want to go to PE and lunch and go home. But he seems to, he's thriving, but I can tell would be better in a classroom or at the school. He likes the social part of it. So, whereas my other daughter, she's fine. She's fine. So it's shown us that, you know, it's been good. It's been good. We're on our own schedule. There's no rush to be anywhere every day. We don't have to fight traffic. It's been good. It's been a really good thing. So.
All right, thank you. What about for you and the boys there?
What do you think? What's your positive? Do you think that?
Like online school.
Yeah. Speak up.
I get to play outside more, like, and I get my work done faster, and it's kind of easier sometimes because my teachers don't assign like a lot of work.
Yeah. So I think the work at their own pace has been really nice. We're all getting more sleep.
Yes.
Necessarily on a great sleep schedule, right? Like it's way too late at night, but it's mornings are nicer, right? And you're not feeling just, you know, mornings where you're just everybody's racing to get out at 8 o'clock and you've already felt your blood pressure rise and like, you know, haven't been the nicest mom and all that. So you know, really nice to have this.
My kids are looking at me over that one.
Right. They're looking at all of us, right? that pace, you know, and I think too, you know, and they are, like you had mentioned too, they're getting outside more, there's actually more. I really hope that, I think we're streamlining our curriculum. I know as a teacher, I feel like we're doing a better job at picking out what's really the most important point. Now, I'm a history teacher, so if I was a math teacher, this would probably be a whole different discussion, or a science teacher or something like that. But, you know, kind of streamline that curriculum. I've noticed their teachers are streamlining the curriculum. You know, with the twins, I've been able to work with them some one-on-one, so it's helping me kind of see where are they academically, you know, and what are some things we probably need to focus on more in the future, you know, who's good, who struggles at what, who has a strength in what, more than I usually get to do. Because there's, you know, Deck looked at me one day and he goes, Mom, usually we only see like 2 hours a day. And it's true. We see each other for a split second in the morning, we go to work, you know, we go to school today, and then at night it's run to this practice or this this thing. And now, better or worse, we're together all the time. Right?
She says it with a smile.
That's good. And a couple other questions here. You know, we've talked a little bit about challenges and things that you've faced. And if you think through those, um, are there particular things that you found really useful to just work through those as a group, as a family, to be able to make it a positive experience? And I think in a lot of ways you've mentioned some of these things, but are there any other challenges that you've had to face other than, you know, late night, you know, Xbox gaming or whatever it is, and trying to unplug for a little while or what have you? There was someone who posted something just about screen time and kids kind of attached to a screen, looking at a lecture, looking at, you know, doing that. I think it's refreshing to hear that there's situations where teachers have tried to really condense that material into a short session, activities that are hands-on, the kids active. Some of the things in the chat mentioned, and there, someone must know I like cooking. I read that part because the physics of baking, out of Harvard, I think I'm going to have to spend a little time in that. I hadn't gone there yet, but you know, doing some of those things and what that's turned learning into. Either of you have any challenges that and a great solution you came up with?
I mean, our challenge has been, and I don't know that I have a great solution. We like friends and we like interactions, the personalities at our house. And so it's been hard to stay motivated to get the work done when we're not with our teacher, right? Or they're not in their classroom. And we kind of had a schedule going, and I would just break down like, okay, here's the things your teachers want you to do each week. And I'd have 3 things each day that they should get done. So it was like 3 to 4 things. I thought that was manageable. We get up, we do that. I'm the only in the house, and then I got really sick and was basically laid up in bed for 4 days, and that whole thing kind of fell apart. They were still kind of doing their reading and those kind of things. So, and now it's almost the end of school. So we're just really struggling to kind of get to the end, right? When there's no, I don't know, that whole last day of school thing, and, you know, Declan would be finishing elementary school, and, you know, so he's missing out on some of those end of year things, and just that motivation to kind of get to the end has been, and to keep, our district is doing a hold harmless approach with grades. So while grades are recorded, basically whatever grade the student had before we left, we ended up over spring break them saying, okay, we're not coming back, right? So whatever you had before, I think that was like Q2, then you your grade can improve, but it can't go down. So I think that's somewhat more for high school, you know, has been kind of some kids are really motivated by the grades, so they don't really feel that, especially if they've already had an A or B or whatever they found acceptable, right? And so I think this is really hard for working parents.
Yeah.
And working parents with younger kids, especially, is really hard. And none of us want to reading, and none of us want to see them fall behind on math. The nice thing, we're all in this, so I'm like, everybody's going to be behind in reading. So make it up. I don't know, but you still don't want to see your kids struggle. So that's been our biggest challenge, is just kind of like staying motivated, and all of us staying motivated when it can just get to be a lot to feel it.
Yeah. A number of people are talking in the chat just about Zoom, and there's varying degrees. Some school districts use it, some have banned it. There's a lot of things, and quite honestly, if I was not able to use Zoom with my classroom, then I would record myself, you know, because I think seeing me and that sort of thing would be very important in short little segments, and have them and do discussions, you know. In my case, with an experience with the learning management system that would have a discussion possibility sort of built into it, there would be that discussion where you could actually have that online conversation as needed. And certainly, you know, being able to reach out to the ones who are sort of dropping out. And Laura mentioned one thing about the high school that she teaches at, parent involvement has really improved substantially And I think that's interesting because having been in some school districts myself where, you know, parent involvement, you shook the trees, you went out in the community, you did all these things, but you still had a hard time getting everybody to actively participate.
Mhm.
And this may open some doors, and I'd like to learn more about that as to, you know, why did this make a difference for them, and how could we capture that for the future so that we can keep that connection going? Because I think that would be pretty incredible to do that. The big final question here, and I'll have a few things and then we'll answer some questions. Looking out into the future and moving from this day forward, we're maybe in the final weeks of a school year, and you know, everybody, you know, moves on from this point. When you look at the future of education, what changes do you think are necessary for just education in general to move forward from this time and be better prepared, better equipped, be able to reach our learners in more, you know, varied ways, to have them learn in a variety of ways? What are some key things that are takeaways for you from this experience that you hope would change things for the better, and what would those be for the future? If you want, Jamie, you can start.
I think they're going to have to, teachers may have to streamline it more, or make it, you know, I don't know about you, Rebecca, but Common Core is big here in the state. That is why my children, because we spent some time overseas, and they went to a public school in Germany, and so coming back into Common Core, it was past while we were over there, was a disaster. So I don't know how it is from your perspective as a parent to have to assist my child in doing Common Core makes my hair fall out. But I think now that everyone's having to do this and they've done it, and it's not so scary. So, hey, let's create programs that, and they're already out there for homeschoolers, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, this can be done. This is, I don't think it's as bad as, it was terrifying for me to have a child at home for schooling, because I didn't feel like I could do the job, or that they wouldn't do the job, but they were doing really, really well with it. And I think maybe get rid of the rough, cut out the crap per se, and focus on the major subjects that these kids need. So I don't know if that answers the question, or that's just my thinking behind it. I mean, Rebecca's a teacher. I'm coming from the parents' perspective as well. But I just think you got to get rid of a lot of the little things that are unnecessary in school, going to school, which I don't know if that made any sense.
Well, I think the idea of efficiency, I think one thing that has bore out of this is that learning can be sometimes more efficient when you're really focusing in on those goals and those objectives, those skills solely, and then the application of those, which is important. And, you know, we've talked in the previous show just about things like transition times in school, and just times that you know, minutes and minutes turn to hours and hours turn to days that are sort of, you know, squandered away just because of what all has to happen within the school to make classes go on and so forth. Becky, you have anything you want to add there?
I guess one of mine was streamlining our curriculum, I think a little bit. For me, that looks like less testing. Missouri, the Department of Education has canceled, you know, all those required testing for the year. And while, yeah, I think some things need to happen and we need to have some way to gauge progress, et cetera. I think hopefully this will make us look a little more at that, and maybe we don't need as much of that, which does take up time.
I was going to ask you that, Rebecca.
Yeah.
It's so hard to pack all their knowledge into one test and say the child is judged on that one test when they've done wonderful all year long in the classroom on those tests, but then you throw them into a big standardized test and it's a disaster for the child.
Right.
So
I'm hoping we'll streamline a little bit of that. I hope that people now are realizing the importance of schools beyond just education, the social emotional, the social work part. I mean, we're feeding kids, we're
Yeah.
services, we're getting whole family services, and you know, how fortunate am I that I have a job that can withstand a pandemic and I can still feed my children and all of those things, but not everyone is that fortunate. So thinking about those kids that, I had one kid tell me, he was like, this is the worst experience of my life. And he needs school. He needs school for many different reasons. So us thinking about, um, let's bring this virtual school stuff, the things that really work well, let's figure out how to integrate them into a traditional classroom, but let's keep our traditional classrooms going and make them better, right? And so that, and I think also having reliable internet access and um, devices for everybody, no matter whether you can pay for them or not, so that we can, because what it looks like is we're going to be doing this for a while and something else could happen, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know what the future holds. And so being able to go back and forth between switching to virtual school again, switching back to some sort of hybrid, going back to normal school, but so that we can really level that playing field for kids that, that's been a huge gap, is that access to technology and really it's reliable internet. We have to have a way
Yeah.
so that every kid can participate in what we're putting out there, whether it's a traditional classroom or when we're doing it like this. So that would be my hope, that that as a teacher I get better in this and can learn new things to bring in, but that kids have what they need to participate either way.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I've just got a couple things I'm going to kind of fly through here, but I want to get back to both of y'all, and I'm going to ask the kids there just kind of what do they think's gone the best for them through this, and then what's maybe they don't like so much. So just be prepared for that. And then we've got a few questions in the chat box that we want to target, but a couple of things I want to cover, and these will all, I'll post these online because I want to be able to get to the Q&A here because we've got a lot of activity in the chat window. But just in terms of the impact that this is having, there's lots of data and statistics I'm kind of interested in. And you watch the news, read the news. The word billion is commonplace. We're in the trillion is a common word now. To most of us, I don't really know what that means. But when you start looking at if 16.2 is maybe 2%, you understand the money and the requirement to make things happen and the challenges there. The bottom graphic on the right is interesting. A college here in North Carolina put this out, and I think it was it struck me because it gave a quick analysis of what have they had to do in this particular crisis, and maybe what is that going to mean for the future of how they're going to offer education. And I kind of like those pictures and numbers that can show us those things. So I've included that in the slides, and again I'll post those out. The other thing I wanted to mention really was sort of the all-stars of remote learning with families. And there was a graphic put out by the Georgia Professional Tech Educators, and the great suggestions, and it looks like a really fine run household there. I think if you were to look at my household, if I still had kids, it would look more like this. And that would be what was going on in learning in my house, probably. But we'll just say that this is maybe what we're really wanting to have happen. So that graphic has some great tips. And if you want to, some of those maybe you could share out with people. And all of these will be posted out onto the website I have prepared, which is just davidmahaley.com, the Pandemic Educator. And the video of this recording will be placed there usually about 2-3 days afterwards once I get it and I post it out there as well. It's also available here at Learning Revolution that you can get to. Now some quick Q&A here for everybody. All right, I'm gonna pick on James Henry because I hadn't heard from him in a bit. He might be asleep over there. So James, tell me a little bit about what do you think has gone okay or well for you through this, and what maybe you say, I don't like this so much.
Well, I mean, I get to get up whenever I want to, which is good, and yeah.
What's going well and what hasn't gone so well?
I don't think math has really gone well for me. It's kind of gotten harder. I can't be in a classroom, just ask right away and get instant feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet that is a bit of a struggle. Math, just I could see that. Grayson, what about you?
See, I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. I've actually been thriving in this environment. I think the only major challenge I faced is, like James Henry said, that one-on-one instruction I get from my teachers, that instant feedback. It takes a couple hours, up to 4 hours for my teachers to respond to a question. And it can be really difficult to get communication with certain topics that I need instantly because I have an assignment due at midnight. So I think it's overwhelming for the teachers as well because they always have to respond to these students, all of these 400 students that they have to deal with.
Right. And Declan, what do you think?
I like that, like, I can wake up and, like, do my work whenever I want, but I don't like that my teachers aren't there to, like, explain to me the topic, and, like, I guess next year I'll be, like, a little more behind, because, like, we're not, like, when I left school, we were working on algebra, but, like, now we're back to doing, like, just like multiplication.
Yeah.
Here I'm like taking challenge math. So because of this, I'll have to take an extra class in the summer to go.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
few things that like one-on-one, that feedback from the teacher, that explanation. Math isn't I can't help him that much on that.
Yes, I think there probably are a number of challenges, and certainly, you know, the support in the house can only go so far in certain academic levels for sure. And finding new ways and being a little bit innovative is good. I would let me look through I know we've just got about a minute or so here.
David, I'm gonna make a comment real quick. It's weird because James Henry's math in the classroom, he's been doing really well. Grayson's math in the classroom has not been doing so well, and they flipped. He's struggling now. She's thriving exponentially. It's the strangest. Don't ask. Now, I saw where somebody wrote Khan Academy. Check that out, and that's been a huge help for her.
Or Virginia says there's a math teacher in South Korea that is making $1 million a year teaching online algebra. So maybe that's the one you need to.
Wow. Give me her information.
Yeah.
Wow.
Listen, I think everybody's really appreciated y'all spending the time, and thanks Grace and James Henry and Declan for participating a bit. It's just valuable, I think, for us to hear the differing perspectives, and we talk a lot about what we're doing as teachers and how we're addressing this, but I think taking a little bit step back and hear from parents and hear from students and the learners is really supportive for us to make those improvements, to continue to improve what we're doing. And like was mentioned, I think we're going to continue on having to address some of these issues for some months, maybe longer to come.
Yeah.
We'll see. But thank you both. And thanks to everybody for joining us. And again, the resources I'll place out onto the website there if you need to get to any of those. And again, just thank you a bunch. And next week we'll plan to get together about the same time. And it may be my last episode I do for this conference. I'll have to see. I have a little schedule change coming up after that. But what's next for the Pandemic Educator is what we're going to look at and really focus on the future and how all of these things have impacted how we plan for what's next. So again, thank you all, and I'll be here for a few minutes in the chat to just answer any questions, and we'll see you all next week.
Perfect. Good luck, Rebecca.
Well, you too. Thank you.
Take care.
Talk to you. Bye.